Hi, my name is Mike Eshu, and I'm here today to talk to you about operating model overviews, design considerations for operating models as we think about cloud adoption at scale with enterprises. More and more, we're hearing from our enterprise business customers that they're looking for more agility. They want to see more IT innovation leveraged across their business with the ability to give them more results faster. Though at the same time, they still have traditional operating model concerns, operating applications which have compliance requirements for split application and infrastructure operations teams, while at the same time adopting SaaS products and other types of new data science experimentation type technologies that breaks the traditional mold of operating models. In the past, we saw simple operating model requirements. We had business applications, and then we had IT providing services and delivering traditional operating models. To think about what we saw in the last slide, we see this moment of increased business demand for different types of operating models. Indeed, we're seeing critical SaaS applications which are required for the field to be conducting sales business. Well, at the same time, we're seeing innovation type applications that are driving consumption of agile development methodologies, delivering rapid results to responding market segment conditions. And so the fan out of these operating models have never been higher. We need DevOps type operating models. We need traditional operations. We need experimental operations to allow our data scientists to make best use of production data and conduct experiments, but do so in a safe way. So as we think about this fan-out moment of operating models, we quickly realize that we will need to provide more governance across more operating models. We need to think about all the same things in the operating models that we've traditionally considered, and we need to include those in our new operating models. No one thinks that DevOps perhaps means that we want to discount considering security and designing security into our application. We certainly still expect a high degree of availability from our traditional operations. In fact, because of some of modern cloud technologies, such as auto-scaling and multi-availability zone or multi-region availability designs, customers are expecting more from those traditional operating models. We need to be just as compliant in our DevOps operating model and as we are in those experimentation operating models as we have been in our traditional operating models. So we need to think through all of these similar design considerations as we build out operating models. So first of all, what is an operating model? We think of them as products as Amazon, and we're always thinking about who does what. Starting from a people perspective, who's going to do what? So let me introduce to you a simple rubric that we can use to consider operating model design. So on the screen, we vertically divide engineering from operations, and horizontally, we define application operations from infrastructure operations. And now, of course, we might be able to debate where does middleware frameworks fit. If I'm using PHP, who would be responsible for those operations? It's not important when we're using this simple rubric to think through exactly who's going to do what, rather at a high level, who's going to have the high order responsibilities for each one of these quadrants. So in the upper quadrant, we initially see application engineering. How are we going to design or perhaps procure an application for promotion into production? It's typically thought of as a team that does that. And then who will operate that application? And will those very same teams also be responsible for specifying the infrastructure? Think about amount of memory required, processor size. Maybe that's specified by the commercial off-the-shelf product. Or maybe what we need to do is consider some design constraints that application teams are going to use. And ultimately, we'll have people that will look after the infrastructure operations. And we can think of using this rubric to design all manner of operating models. Of course, if we put a big square around the whole thing, we could have a holistic DevOps style operating model where only one entity was looking across all of the responsibilities. So the question becomes, which operating model is appropriate for what use case? In this more traditional divided operating model that we've started with, we can think about that for our sustain use case. We want to use these type of operating models to drive costs down in our IT operations, perhaps at the price of agility, because we want to drive stable, compliant landing zones and environments at the lowest price possible. For more innovative workloads, we might consider an optimized operating model where we have one tier of staff looking at application operations and design, and another tier of staff looking at infrastructure operations and design. And so that's where you're going to put your skilled cloud experts, those that have those AWS certifications and so on, and then leave the business tier application development staff to focus on iterating on IT applications or perhaps implementing commercial off-the-shelf applications. Lastly, you can think about a grow or an innovation style operating model, and you'll notice we still leave a layer of cloud operations down at the bottom. And those cloud operations folks might be looking after things like networking, where higher order IT governance processes decide what ports could be opened from a firewall perspective, or perhaps anti-DDoS or denial of service technologies may be procured by a separate team. Maybe DNS is that thin layer in the bottom, and all the other responsibilities, both cloud infrastructure design through to application design into serverless technologies, containerized technologies, are left to the responsibility of that application engineering team. And so as you think about those different types of operating models, let's step back and consider how you might consider migrating to the cloud. So we have the 6 different R's of migration. Starting from the top, we start with rehost. This is often a block-for-block copy of blocks on a disk drive into a disk drive running in the cloud. These are our simplest migration. Whatever you see in the on premises, you're now going to replicate over to the cloud. We could get into replatform, where we're considering adopting either different access management technologies, or we're considering adopting the Amazon Relational Database Service and other types of serverless technologies that are very natural when you're migrating into the cloud. We call that the replatform. From there, we can get to more sophisticated approaches such as repurchase into SaaS or refactor, where we're taking advantage of serverless applications. And we always want to be mindful when we're moving our estate to the cloud, that might be a great opportunity to either retire the need for the application or otherwise decide not to move it. And now if we think about those migration styles and what our goals are of moving the application, we can map our goals, say sustain mode, rehost into the cloud against traditional operations, or perhaps those grow type opportunities where we're refactoring our applications into the more traditional DevOps application operating model design. So now that we've thought through what operating models are, let's think about how people, operating models, and products are designed with the help of us at AWS. Our customer enablement teams, both our professional services, our managed services, and our enterprise support teams, coupled with training and certification and leveraged across and deployed to our partner network, can bring a tremendous amount of people to help build out the skills you're going to need on these different operating models. If you've been doing cloud for a while, how are you going to scale cloud and ensure that applications are making it into the right operating model? If you're just getting started, certainly you're going to need some help with both your cloud operations and thinking through what tranches to migrate into cloud and why. What should be those business outcomes that you expect? And all of this is built on top of the AWS platform. So I'm from the AWS Managed Services team, and we specifically look after operating once you're in cloud. So that bottom layer, sometimes that bottom right quadrant, we can fit into a different set of operating models depending on your business goals. We could be helping you with your infrastructure operations, or we could be providing a thin layer of cloud-enabled managed services in a thinner model where your application teams are doing compliant DevOps style development. And you can see all the different feature areas that we help you with, from provisioning to business continuity management to patch management and so on, listed here on your screen. So to think back to our original slide of those business objectives mapping against the different operating models, at this point we want to pull IT out of the middle. We want to bring IT up to a governance layer so these operating models can naturally fit against the business demand for the different operating models. So hopefully you'll use that 2x2 rubric and really start thinking about what people are going to be doing what processes and therefore leveraging what technology as you think building out your various operating models to meet your business objectives. Thanks very much.